Welcome to this episode of What Works For Me. Mike couldn't make it on this one, but don't worry, he's still here for the intro. Anyway, let's get right to the show.
Welcome to another episode of What Works For Me, a podcast highlighting best practices in Christian schools. This podcast is produced in partnership with Lutheran Education Association. To discover how LEA supports Christian teachers and schools, visit www.lea.org.
Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking to Matthew Baxter, Dr. Matthew Baxter, I want to get that right, director at Anchor Lutheran School in Anchorage, Alaska. Dr. Baxter, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your school?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Matthew Baxter, like you said, and I work at Anchor Lutheran School as the director. The school is early childhood, 3 years old through high school. We recently opened up for high school last year, and we'll be completing a $7 million expansion project, which will include 15 additional classrooms and a gymnasium starting this summer. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Before I worked at Anchor Lutheran School, I worked in China at Hangzhou International School for 4 years, and then all up and down the West Coast, including Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, and yeah, I actually did a mission teaching trip to Guatemala too before all that. So I have a diverse experience with different cultures and different backgrounds, both in secular education and in Christian education. On the weekends, I like to be outside as much as possible, even if it is snowing feet and feet outside.
Yeah, we were talking, I know, before I hit record here, and you said that you think they're going to set a snowfall record up in Anchorage this year, that you're getting 2 or 3 inches a day. That's quite the experience.
Those are light days.
Light days, there you go. I got to imagine that you probably have a Lutheran school in one of the prettiest parts of the world here. You can probably see mountains from your playground, can't you? Oh, that's so neat. So neat. So today we are not here to talk about the weather, although we could. We're going to talk about AI in schools. And this is something that I know has been a kind of a hot button issue the last year and a half. Well, I don't know. When did that come out? November, you were saying something like that?
November 28th or 29th of last year.
Okay. So relatively new, and it's one of those things where I think a lot of us don't either know exactly how we'd use it, or we just hear all the things with, kids plagiarizing entire school assignments. So let's talk a little bit about that. First, let's start with your perspective on AI. How do you think this is going to be used in schools, you think?
I think the future of schools will be teachers who will be co-teaching synchronously with AI, and that'll be a part of everyday practice. And it won't be something that's hidden or questioned. It will be the best practice.
That's interesting. So how, knowing that that's where you think it's going, how are you guys using it there at Anchor, or how are you using it?
Right. Yeah. So, from a teaching perspective, when, let's see, January of last year, we came back from break, I had kind of, dived deep into specifically ChatGPT, but also other language models. And, we had a meeting about it, and this was January 8th or 9th of last year. And, I basically said, we need to embrace this as a school because of the competitive advantage it will give us and give our students if we use this. And, I was kind of open-ended about it with the teachers. I kind of was like, we need to figure it out together and figure out what uses we can have with it. With that said, on the student side, the first thing we did was make it non-accessible on our network because of the, just the risk of plagiarizing. We have introduced it in ways in the classroom where the students can engage with it, because I think it's important for us to teach them the skills to use the AI, but it can't erode the foundational knowledge and understanding piece that students need to then go out into the world and actually use these language model tools productively and accurately. Some of the things that we've done in the classroom is, anything that requires, a ton of writing. Let's say, unit plans or lesson plans. You have an idea for a lesson plan, have the AI model build it for you in a few seconds. You have, a parent sends you an email, have the AI model, draft up, a response. You need to build some rubrics, have the AI model do that. Some more specific cases though, our math teacher, she actually has the students work with the AI model in one of her programs, and that AI is actually sitting down with the student and essentially working through the problems with them. And so, she can give individualized attention to this one student while everyone else in the class is also getting individualized attention as well.
That's really interesting. So you hear about it, and you get all the teachers together and you say, "Hey, we should start using this." You don't, it sounds like you didn't mandate it, but you said, "Let's figure this out together." I love that. And then even turning it off for students right away. Like, let's turn this off until we get a handle on it on our own and figure out how we're going to use that. I love that forward thinking that, hey, it's something that's not going away. We're going to have to use it. Let's figure out how to be best at it, and let's figure out how to kind of tame it in a sense, so it doesn't just end up being this thing we're now managing all the time. Tell me a little bit about that math one. That's really interesting. So my experience with AI is very limited. I have Chat GPT or Google Bard or whatever, and I have it like craft letters every once in a while, or emails if I need something. But that working with kids individually, how does that work?
Yeah, so she'll have the students on. I think she uses ChatGPT for it. I'm not quite sure though. But it's the students are like, here's the problem. It's not, you can't ask the bot to solve the problem, because of course it'll solve the problem. So you're doing the problem, and then when you have a question about a step, you ask the AI about the step. How do I solve this problem? What are the different ways I can solve this problem? So being, specific with your prompts on, meeting those learning gaps. And that's how she uses it in her classroom. And that teacher in particular has really embraced it at a very high level. And then I think the most part that is really phenomenal is actually increases learning outcomes. So then the students, these are all formative assessments, right? When it comes to a summative assessment, they're taking away the scaffolding of the AI, and they have to do it on their own. But because they got the individualized attention the whole time, their outcomes are higher.
I love that you found a way to effectively use it to help kids. So I can hear my teacher brain's already going, okay, but how do you know if a kid's really working through it and not just asking for the answer? How do you manage that?
Yeah, and I'm not, I don't know specifically, how the math teacher manages that. I know though the process and the outcomes, and both of those are in line, with our expectations and mission. And at the end of the day, we can't stop students from plagiarizing and cheating before AI. So the function of now that AI is here is all of a sudden like plagiarizing and cheating is going to be like this, rampant. Well, it already is. And so to blame AI for that, I think it's more of a cultural problem than a tool problem. Culturally, we're driven to have the right answers. Our whole system is focused on grades. It's not focused on learning. And that's really what AI is doing, is it's taking away this system and the assessments that focus on grades, and the paradigm shifts comes in with, well, now we have to focus on learning because the AI can just do everything and get the grades for anyone who wants to use it. And so that's really what is happening currently is you're going to see assessments change dramatically, in high school and university level, especially, like doing a 10-page written paper, let's say for, a class, the professor should assume that every paper that's turned in was somehow supported by AI. So is that an authentic measure of learning? No, it's not. And I mean, there's definitely learning that happens, but then on the other side, okay, so how do we design an assessment that actually focuses on learning instead of just, the output to get the grade?
Yeah, I love that perspective that it is just a tool. And you're right, kids have cheated before. This is not new. My take on it is always, if a kid wants to cheat and I don't catch him, I guess good for them. That's just going to hurt them later. It's not going to hurt me now, right? I'm not going to spend all of my time trying to chase after. Well, I can just tell. Come on, don't worry about it too much. But that you're right. It is going to change a lot of things, and I think that sometimes in schools we get stuck on, we don't often assess in ways that are best for kids. We assess in ways that are easiest to grade. That's why Scantrons are so popular. That's why multiple choice tests exist, right? They don't tell you, you don't know if a kid picked A because they're the right answer or because they guessed. You don't know. Maybe they got lucky, maybe they knew it. And so you're right. We do need to have more authentic ways. And I think that that's an interesting take. You're right. That's a good one. So you had mentioned having teachers kind of use AI to write a lesson plan or respond to a parent email. And I know before we started recording here, you talked a little bit about the emotional toll that goes into some of that. Let's talk about that. So you think there's a place for AI here to lessen some of that emotional work to make teaching a little more, you said, sustainable. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and this is as an educator and an administrator, I think one of the biggest problems facing America is our teacher shortage. And a big part of that teacher shortage is teacher burnout. And this is the only tool that has come out that can actually solve those problems. And to be able to, have, a parent writes a inflammatory email to you, for you to read through that and then to process that and then to, have an output that is meaningful and that, shares what needs to be shared. There's an emotional toll to that. And there's also just time. It might take you an hour to write that email. Right? It depends on, kind of the level of the email, but okay, I copy and paste that email, put it into ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT, respond to this email. I'm then taking some of that, third-party trauma that all of us teachers and administrators get and putting it onto a machine that, has an endless capacity for that because it's not affected by it. Now, does that mean that I didn't read the email? No, of course I read the email, but I'm not processing it at a level that requires a written response. Now, when ChatGPT writes that written response, I'm going to take it, I'm going to read through it and make sure that what's said in there is appropriate and relevant and specific enough. 100% of the time, I'm going to make some changes. There's always going to be some amount of change that you're going to make to whatever's the output of these language models.
That's really interesting because I know a lot of us have, we've gotten those emails and we spend hours thinking up responses and we'll get it all written up and then we'll have somebody proofread it and they'll go, you can't say that. And you're like, you're right. I'm mad. I probably can't say that. So it's nice to put it into a computer model that doesn't have those feelings, doesn't have those hangups, isn't going to respond maybe as fiery or as snarkily as sometimes we default to. That's a great takeaway. Is there any other uses? Somebody's listening to this and they go, okay, that sounds great, but it sounds too easy. I haven't used AI before. I want to try and use it in my classroom. What is the first thing you'd recommend to a teacher or an administrator listening?
I mean, I'd just get an account and start asking questions. Start small. but you'll learn more ways to prompt. There's a job out now. It's called a prompt engineer. I should retire from being a school administrator and become a prompt engineer because they're paying them like $300,000 a year to work for Fortune 500 companies. And it's just someone who asks AI questions. You just ask it questions to try to solve problems. And that's what it's all about. You made a comment about it, being hard, or it's too easy, right? Like this tool incorporating it makes our jobs too easy. Our jobs are too hard. They're extremely difficult on so many different levels. And if there's something out there that can boost our productivity and eliminate working, hours on end, I say, full send, let's go. Because there's not enough teachers, and we need tools like this to retain teachers in the field and to bring up job satisfaction with the teachers we do have. And that right there will affect student learning. If we can bring up the morale and job satisfaction of our teachers, kids are going to want, if teachers want to be there, kids are going to want to be there, and learning will happen.
That's awesome. So I'm just thinking here, if you're an English teacher and you assign a bunch of essays, can you have ChatGPT grade essays? Can you like spit it in and say, hey, give me a rough grade here?
I'm sure you could. You would want to give it parameters.
Okay.
Right? Like here's the rubric.
Mm-hmm.
You might even want to put in a grading philosophy, but you can train your own AI, right? Like I think we talked about before the podcast, I've taken all of our documents for our school and fed it into ChatGPT, and now it knows all that information, right? So, a limitation of what you can get on, through ChatGPT or these other AI models is that they are only using information that's published on the web through a certain time period. But you can give it more information to learn from, and that's and so yeah, there's no reason why it couldn't give you a grade for papers. It couldn't pick out errors. Is it going to be perfect? No. But the more you use it in that capacity, the better it's going to get.
Interesting. So is there any specific ones you recommend to somebody listening? What do you use?
I use ChatGPT Premium paid subscription. You don't need that, but it's $20 a month, and the amount of productivity I get out of it, I feel like it's worth it. I do know with ChatGPT 4 has less hallucinations than ChatGPT 3.5. So if you're not familiar with hallucinations, it's basically it's when the AI produces something that's misinformation. It's not true, or it's false, or it's not referenced correctly. So that's, obviously the less that happens, the better. And that's why ultimately you need to read through whatever the outputs are, because they happen probably more often than you would like. You'd obviously like it to be perfect, but it happens. I would say almost every output has something that's not quite right with it. On the same side, I don't know if you're familiar with DALL-E, but that's like the image creating one. Like every image I've ever created, it's like, people have 6 fingers and like, their forehead and stuff. Even that's getting better, but it's every output is going to have something that's not quite right.
That's true. It is just a tool. It's, we like to think computers should be smarter, but they're only as smart as I guess we create them to be, right? So always something worth proofreading. Well, it's been great to have you on. We've covered a lot. If anybody has questions about this stuff in particular, can they email you? Is it okay if I include your email?
Okay.
Perfect. Well, awesome. Well, it's been great to talk to you. Can I pray for you before we go?
Absolutely.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for Matthew. Thank you for his work at Anchor Lutheran and for all the things he's doing to support students and teachers there in Alaska. Please be with him as he continues through this holiday season, and bless the rest of his school year and the continued growth of your kingdom there at Anchor. In your son's name we pray. Amen.